Patricia Adams joins me now from Toronto. She's an economist and the executive director of Probe International, an independent think tank and environmental monitor in Canada. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
You know, there was a lot of optimism after the Paris Climate Agreement was signed 3 years ago. Now it sounds like, according to recent reports, that conditions are worse than before that, and greenhouse gas emissions are even higher. So was it all for nothing? What is happening here?
I think it was all for nothing. I think that the countries that have committed to the Paris Agreement have done so in an aspirational way. I think when, as we say, when the rubber hits the road and you actually have to start getting CO2 levels down, it's very, very, very difficult to do. And China is a very interesting example in this, because China has essentially two emergencies. One is to secure enough energy for development, and the other is to get levels of pollution down. And I think that being concerned about global warming and about CO2 levels is a distraction, and that China need not worry about reducing CO2 levels. I think that, in fact, the science is not settled, as many environmentalists and governments will argue that it is. I think it isn't. I think there are many, many scientists who do not agree that the science is settled. And I think that the Chinese government is not convinced either that the science is settled, and that its major concern right now is securing enough fossil fuels, that would be gas and oil, and to burn them efficiently and cleanly, so that it is not polluting people and poisoning them with polluted air.
So you have been working on a report about China's environmental progress and pollution. Tell us more about that report, and what did you find?
Well, my first report was in 2015, just before the Paris conference, and I argue that the Chinese government is correctly not concerned about CO2 levels, not concerned about greenhouse gas emissions, although it can't say that. And it didn't say that. It argued that it really was concerned about climate change. The American government at the time, and President Obama and other world leaders, had made such a large argument that they had to control climate change that they couldn't walk away from Paris with nothing. So they needed China, the largest emitter of CO2 in the world, to come on board, to agree to go along with the Paris Agreement, and so China did. I think the main reason China did was so that it could secure some of the $100 billion that it was trying to get from the Western industrialized countries to go into the Green Climate Fund. That would help finance Chinese exports of renewable power facilities and equipment, and also finance projects in China. I think that was really China's main interest, and it was not so interested in getting CO2 levels down, and I would agree with that. I think that that's a distraction, as I said. I think the major concern for China and Chinese citizens is blue skies, to get levels of pollution down, and the best way to do that is by burning fossil fuels cleanly. That's not happening right now in China, as you know. Coal is burnt very inefficiently and in a very dirty fashion. Gas is much cleaner burning, but China does not have a lot of gas, and it has now become the largest importer of liquefied natural gas, and it is also the largest importer in the world of crude oil. So securing supplies of fossil fuels, apart from coal, and of course China has lots of coal, but securing supplies of the cleaner burning fossil fuels is its major challenge right now.
All right, Patricia Adams, thank you so much for joining us from Toronto.
My pleasure.